Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
I named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints?
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me for the very first time on Beer with Geeks is Metpod co-host Lauren. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to make my Beer with Geeks debut. As someone who kind of started as a listener of Supergirl TV Talk and Beer with Geeks, this is like a crazy milestone for me.
So, when did you start listening to Beer with Geeks? Like, were you there at the inception, the 5 year, the 5 years ago when Frank and I were like, bad audio equipment and we don't know what we're doing. Let's do this.
I can't say I've been around that long, but I think I started listening to you guys around season 2 of Supergirl, because that's when I got really, really into the show. I was watching it already, but I really got invested in the story to start exploring other fandom, like interaction and discourse in season 2. And then once I found I liked your personalities, I sought out your other podcast. And I remember very distinctly, I had a drive from New York City to Georgia. And
Yeesh, that is a drive.
Yeah, yes, and you guys were with me there every single minute of the way, basically, because I went through and I found every single episode that mentioned Superman, Batman, or Justice League, and I downloaded and listened to them all. So I can't say I've been there since the very beginning, but I have definitely listened to a whole bunch of episodes within like the first 10.
That is crazy. That's so fun. Now, since you seem to be a listener, you have a beer? You have a drink for us this evening?
I do. I do not have a beer, but I do have a seltzer, a key lime flavored LaCroix, often pronounced LaCroix. And it is, if I can give my connoisseur notes on it, it is delightful. It is less lime tasting, more vanilla tasting. I would compare it to I guess like a vanilla Coke, but without the acrid, syrupy sugariness.
Oh, I kind of like that, actually. Not a big fan of vanilla Coke, but maybe I'll try that one, because I'm also drinking a LaCroix. That's hilarious.
I love it.
But I'm drinking the Amur Pepino, which is the blackberry cucumber. It's like
yes.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Me too. It's really good. I got it kind of on a whim, because I'm like, blackberry cucumber, gin and tonic cucumber. I like that as a summer drink, and it is delightfully good. I thought LaCroix used to put sodium in their seltzers, but I don't think they do anymore, or they never did, and I made that up in my brain. I'm not sure, but it's excellent. I'm glad that we both didn't go the beer route. That's kind of funny.
Yeah. A side note. This, since I'm giving, the full rundown with all the notes and everything, the key lime one is one of the special ones, as I believe yours is. When you buy it, it costs like $1 more in the box. Also, I have had yours before. I find it's a really good post-workout drink, just because of the cucumber, I guess. It's super refreshing.
It is super refreshing. Good. Would be a good, that would be a good post-workout if I decided to work out again one day. Yeah, it would be, that would be great.
Same.
One day I'll get back there. Oh, well. So we're here, but speaking of working out, actually, what a great segue this can be if I can work this in. So you and I off the air quite frequently talk about superhero and supervillain costumes on screen and how they're represented, and one must generally go to the gym to wear such costumes. There, I did it. So there. I knew
You had to like circle back around, but yes, you did.
I did. I probably could have gotten from gym to costumes, but I went costumes to gym. But it doesn't matter because that's not really why we're here. We're not here to talk about
I applaud
segues.
what you did.
Thank you, thank you. We're not here to talk about segues though. So you and I, so Frank and I try to get Frank to talk about costumes, and it's just something that he's like generally not interested in when it comes to mutual shared interests. I'd be like, but did you notice the difference between this version of Captain America's costume and this version? And what? And he's honestly, no, I didn't. I did not notice that. So, whereas I notice almost everything.
Same.
I've always been a fan of costumes. Even when I was a kid, they would do that. Part of that I think comes from being a comic fan when I'm a kid, and like an artist does the artist does the costume slightly differently, or it's like the new action figure, is like, oh, they're in their space suit or they're this, and it just like it gets you thinking about it gets you thinking about what they're wearing and how they're wearing it and so on and so forth. So where does the origins of you loving superhero and supervillain costumes come from?
Well, I think this is a really good time to reveal that in real life, I am a professional snob. I am a fashion photographer, so I pay a lot of attention to aesthetics, and I kind of always have. It was that thing where I guess suddenly it made sense that it's marketable to pay attention to other people's appearances, so I started doing that. But I think I always had a huge imagination as a kid, and when we were in our teens, that's when a lot of these adaptations really started coming out, and like they became less of a rare thing and more of a typical thing. And for me, it was always interesting to see what they would do. Like, how would they do like a TV version of a costume or like a movie version of a costume? And I would just fantasize about where these could go, and it was just always like the coolest thing for me. I guess like the way some people in fashion look at the Met Gala or something, like, oh, what's Blake Lively going to wear? I am always so excited to see what the costume's going to look like.
That is a great comparison, because that is literally how I think of like, yeah. Okay, that's great that this person's playing the part, but what is their costume going to look like? I don't really care about the plot. That's nice. However, what are they going to look like when they're on? What are they going to look like when they're on screen? When I was
Tim, I never knew you were so shallow.
I'm incredibly shallow. That's why do you think I'm drinking a cucumber seltzer? Like, jeez. So
there we go. Is your pinky out when you're drinking it?
No, but it was just as I was adjusting the microphone just now. But
okay,
so it counts. When I was a kid, I had this book with my brother. It was this big Marvel encyclopedia that is incredibly outdated now, but it was almost like the history of Marvel up until probably the mid to late 90s, something like that. But in there, so they had all these pictures of those Marvel television shows and serials and films and all of those different things that in growing up in the 90s, like I didn't have access to any of that stuff. Like,
right.
There was no way that you could, like, they had a picture of Nicholas Hammond as Spider-Man from the 70s TV show. And so, like, we'd be there for, like, calling Blockbuster, being like, do you have this? And Blockbuster's like, no, what are you, crazy? Of course we don't have this. But we called so much, they got it. I don't think they even knew that it was us that we kept calling. But eventually they actually did get a VHS tape of it. And we watched it, and it was terrible. It is truly terrible. So, but anyway, so I have opinions. Is actually really what podcasts are all about, opinions. So, what for you makes a good costume on screen?
I really should have thought about this before I hopped on air, shouldn't I?
Nah, that's not. We're not about preparation on Beer with Geeks, unless you're talking. You have to see the movie before you talk about it. But even then, that's not always. We don't always do that. So
it'd be a really fun wing it episode. Let's see. Well, I guess I am a huge DC fan. I should just be straightforward with that. And it's in a lot of aspects, especially costumes. And for me, I really love how comic accurate they try to make the costumes. Because I think Marvel goes the more utilitarian route where they try to figure out how would this work best in a real life setting. And DC, I think their first thought is, how can we make this look like how it does in the comics? And then we'll figure out how to like adapt it and make it like more practical later.
Yep, I would agree. I think in the last 10 years, I think that's the way to go. I think the maybe 2008 is The Dark Knight and Iron Man, right? And then Batman Begins is 2005, which is the like this is the real world version of the suit, blah blah blah. And so I think you're right.
And that's the exception to like the practical.
I agree. And from there, I think you're right that Marvel went mostly in a route that says if this were real, this is what it would look like. Captain America is a great example of that. The first Avenger, like like even the red, the red stripes on his abdomen to form the flag are actual straps. They're not They're not there for aesthetic purposes. They're there because they hold part of his padding, part of armor, and that's the if this were real version. Whereas after The Dark Knight, you get Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, and it's really like it's not practical for Wonder Woman to be running around in what she's wearing, but it doesn't matter because that's what she wears. So and that's
actually. Can I argue that the only thing that's not practical is her heels?
Yes, the wedges are definitely not practical, but I will backtrack. As soon as I said Wonder Woman, I was like, you know what? That's not true because she basically wears what anybody would be wearing in ancient Greece or ancient Rome. So So I would say, all right, I'll backtrack on Wonder Woman, but okay, so like let's say Batman is a perfect example of an impractical costume because you have no peripheral vision in a Batman mask, no matter which version of the character you're talking. Like I've
never once thought about that.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
You would only see what's in front of you, and and you wouldn't be able to hear well because it's covering your ears. And so I do know that Ben Affleck on BVS used to have to be guided towards places when he had the mask on because he could barely see where he was going. So, which honestly, if you think about the fight choreography in that film, whether it's him or his stunt double, is even more impressive than it is just because they can barely see where they're going.
Right. And it's funny because in Arrow season 2, when he meets Barry Allen, that's Barry Allen's gift to him, is he gives him like a mask that helps him see.
That's right. The compression mask. That's right.
Right. And I, even seeing that episode and being fully aware of it, I never once thought about that with Batman.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, and Oliver's reason on that show is like, because it blocks part of your range, and the mask, his version is that the mask wouldn't move with his face. So when he needs to turn quickly, it wouldn't work the way that you wanted it to. And so, at least Batman's mask moves with him if you don't count the bat pivot, up until the Dark Knight got rid of the bat pivot. So
is that the term for when he turns his entire body to see behind him?
Yeah, that's what they started calling it in the Michael Keaton movie because he couldn't turn or see or hear. At least other versions of Batman could move their neck, but they used to call it the bat pivot because he had to figure out a way to not look ridiculous turning his whole body. Which if you know that he does it, it's very hard to unsee it because you're like,
I imagine it would make
goes.
like a really awesome college drinking game.
Oh, the bat pivot. I think you would die depending on the version of. I think you would just die.
That's a late night episode of Beer with Geeks.
Well, no, I want to live. So, man, the very last episode, we just do a commentary on Batman '89, and then hopefully we make it out alive at the end of it. That would be.
There we go.
That would be fine. So you have. You're a DC aficionado over a Marvel aficionado. I love both pretty much equally. I think each have their merits. I like my DC comics more than my Marvel comics, but I like my films. I'm film dependent, I guess, instead of company dependent. So, do you have a list of film costumes that you say, yes, this really works, whether it's Marvel or DC or other? We could talk Hellboy or the Rocketeer or the Phantom or the Shadow or anything like that. And then do you have a list that you think, no, this absolutely is trash, it does not work?
Before I give my before I give like the suits that I love, I do want to take time to revisit one of my favorites because I am mostly a DC girl, but I love X-Men so much. Like so much. Like in my lifetime, I want to see like a Netflix style X-Men show because I believe that television is the only way you can do that ensemble cast justice.
You know, that's funny that that's really funny you say that. I saw somebody tweeting about that today that says
Was it me?
like it wasn't you, but somebody said, you know, the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, you know, the mutant school is basically Hogwarts. So why is that not something that people are taking advantage of on television?
Yeah.
That's
it's
really
I don't
point.
think X-Men should be a movie like ever. It's which I love it. I love it so much, and I love those early Bryan Singer movies. But it should absolutely be a television show. Anywho, in the X-Men 1.5 DVD, 1.5 is like the name of the version that had like a million special features on it.
I remember.
There's you probably know the scene I'm about to point out. There's like this outtake where they're hopping, I think around like the Statue of Liberty or something, and they can't hop the wall because their leather suits are so tight. Like they can only get their feet like maybe 2 feet off the ground before it constricts them. So that is the definition of that costume should not have happened.
Yes. Well, that was the era of superhero films where they were like, all right, I don't know if Batman and Robin bombed, so I don't know if people are going to buy costumes. So let's have this line in a movie where Logan says, "Oh, you really go outside in these things?" And Cyclops is like, "What do you want? Yellow spandex?" Ha 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 ha. References. But that scene you just talked about, like the yellow spandex, they'd be able to get over the wall. So
exactly.
You know. So I think your X-Men to me is the original X-Men uniforms is a great example of a
transition period,
a very unique point in superhero films where they're like, it can't look too much like a costume because people don't like costumes. Somebody decided somewhere along the way, people don't like costumes. But I say that's half the fun of superheroes is that because like I can watch any police procedural, I can watch Hawaii Five-0 and watch them do like crazy superheroic things or whatever. But I like the costumes. I want to see them do them in colorful uniforms or whatever. Even the idea of calling them uniforms over costumes in the X-Men is a great example of that. Oh no, we're a team. We wear uniforms.
That's true.
When Joss Whedon wrote the X-Men, pretty much around that same time, a little bit after that, after Grant Morrison's run, where they were all in the leather, body pieces, body suits. I think it was Wolverine says something about like, are we actually wearing these again? And Cyclops says, we're superheroes wear costumes or something like that. And that was that. And boy, X-Men. But then you have Spider-Man right after that, Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and everyone would have flipped if Spider-Man was just like in a zip up.
That's true. And I actually think the Spider-Man costume is probably one of the best. That movie's version of it, like, it can't be beat, in my opinion. Like, they've done little change-ups to, the Amazing Spider-Man, the second, attempt at it. And then, what's his name? Tom Holland, the current Spider-Man.
Yep.
His suit looks good, but honestly, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man costume was perfection.
I think that Sam Raimi's version pops on screen the way that some other ones don't. Part of that is the raised webbing. I know they did that because they were afraid that, before the days of HDTV, even, 4K or HD, whatever, that they were afraid like you wouldn't even see the webbing if we didn't raise it above the costume.
Oh, I had no idea about that.
Yeah. So that's why you get that. But it also gives it a really nice textured look. I actually really like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 costume. It's a classic Spider-Man suit, apart from the giant, long-legged, almost daddy long legs spider on the back. But his eyes are extremely large, and I like that because he would actually be able to see out of the mask that way. So,
right.
Tobey Maguire's mask is a great example of you're not. It's the same with the Batman mask. Like your peripheral vision would just be zero.
Well, he's got Spidey senses to help him.
That is true. That is true. I mean, even Marvel gives their version of Peter a reason to have a restrictive mask, that he has sensory overload, and so it actually helps him focus on what's in front of him, which is I like when films give reasons for why people are dressed the way they are, because
it's my favorite part.
Yeah, right. Because I don't need the suit to necessarily be functional, but I like the film coming up with a reason why they have to wear what they wear. I have a friend who loathes the Ben Affleck Daredevil costume. Which is a great example of trying to be Spider-Man and X-Men at the same time. Because
I was about to say that exactly.
Yeah, because it's this red. He's just basically wearing a red biker jacket, and my friend hates that there's a zipper on the front of it. Just like, and I remember interviews with the director be like, well, he doesn't really have super strength, so he would need like a rather almost protective material, and he's not super wealthy, so where would he make a costume? So like here he is in some leather, like he would be riding a motorcycle. I don't mind it. I think it kind of works, but I'm also willing to accept costumes from their era because I like
Same.
I like those backstories.
You have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of bad costumes, though, that Bullseye non-costume in Daredevil is.
Oh my gosh!
Not having it. Absolutely not.
On the topic of the Amazing Spider-Man 2, I confess I never saw the movie, but the first one I didn't love too much because it looked kind of like a basketball.
I have been saying that for years. You're the first person to say that without me saying it first. Thank you. He looks like he's wearing basketball skin, and it's kind of strange. I don't mind it. He looks like original Steve Ditko Spider-Man, like very first appearance. But I prefer wide-eyed. Amazing Spider-Man 2, he looks like Ultimate Spider-Man, which is my preferred go-to version. So, but that's the movie. That's leaving the movie aside. That's just his costume. We don't have to talk about the actual movie. But I'm dominating. You give me some of yours.
Well, on the topic of seeing costumes and seeing how they're realized, I think we were talking about how you love when there's meaning attributed to why something is a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I love that from the problem solving aspect because it's just a really fun challenge when you think about it, to take something that in our context that doesn't work and then to just brainstorm and find a way to make it work. That is so rewarding, and it's amazing to see that process as a fan. I don't want to seem like an absolute DC Extended Universe fangirl, but I love every single one of those costumes. I love how in Man of Steel it was this idea that the chainmail suit, it was like the undersuit to armor, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also love that.
Also, right, and it's also beautiful because he doesn't have to wear armor because he's the first of his kind that has. Well, I guess they all would have had powers if they were on Earth, but just this idea that there's the nakedness to him, that he's pure, that he doesn't need something to protect him. I love that as a fan.
I absolutely agree with that. I've never actually thought about him almost being naked in a way that he doesn't need the armor that would accompany what his father wore or anything like that. That's a very interesting perspective. It actually makes me appreciate his costume a little bit more. I think, despite it not being my favorite of the DC EU films, I think his Justice League costume is my favorite because I like the blue in that costume the best. He's a little too muted in Man of Steel, and it's a little too navy for my taste in BVS. But I like when Superman doesn't have to hide. I think that's what it comes down to. Just like he doesn't need to wear armor, and so I like the blue making a statement no matter where he is. And so if the blue is bright enough, not maybe Christopher Reeve bright, that was almost like a sky teal, a robin's egg blue, something like that. But that works for him. But I really like that almost royal blue Man of Steel look. It's personal.
I feel
preference.
you because I feel you with liking the blue. I will say though, his Justice League, the Justice League iteration of his costume is my least favorite because he looked very balloony. If you don't know much about the costumes, or I'm not, I guess I just kind of like one mansplained to you. I don't know if you actually do know this. You probably do.
But even if I don't, maybe somebody who's listening doesn't. So or vice versa.
True.
So tell me anyway.
So he wears a silvery muscle suit underneath, and it's blackened in parts to show definition. And then the blue suit actually is very, very thin. Like, think how thin spandex is. It's even thinner. It's meant to be sort of see-through, so the silver comes from underneath. And I think they pushed it too far in Justice League because he looks very balloon-like. I actually did a very kind of I guess, sarcastic tweet where I just posted the image of him in his Justice League suit next to the Batman and Robin images because they were like actually the same amount of shininess. And I mean like the Batman Robin movie from like 1990 or whatever it was. There you go.
7. Yeah. It's a year that will live in infamy.
Tim, that was my first Batman movie ever.
Oh, what a tragic way to start.
I love it though. Like it's funny. This is a tangent. Because that's my first Batman movie. I love the idea of like diesel punk Gotham and like, you know, clown gangs and like motorcycle gangs and stuff. I love the idea of like the neon colors and everything. It's, you know, I was too young to understand that it was bad, so I have a really soft spot for it. But anyway, back to costumes. The Justice League version, he looks like a balloon to me. In my personal preference, as someone who finds Henry Cavill attractive, I don't love him in Batman versus Superman because I think he looked a little too bulky. I love how lean he is in Man of Steel, and I love there's a couple different, I guess, costume changes from Man of Steel to Batman versus Superman. The blue's slightly different, the belt is different, and I just love. And then the wrist accents are different. Mm-hmm. It's more of like a rubberized cuff in the first movie. In the second one, it's like these sort of ribbony stripes that go up his arm.
I forgot about the rib stripes. You're right. I do kind of agree on the bulkiness factor. Like, although I like bulky Superman, he's like almost like it works more for Superman than it does for Clark Kent. Though there's something I very much like about almost like farm boy Clark Kent. You know, like Midwestern, 6'5", just I grew up moving hay. Well, you know what I mean. But yeah. Yeah, you know, just like a, you know, larger than life because I grew up moving hay kind of look. I kind of like that, but it's easy. But also a lean Superman is like, I don't need to be huge because I'm Superman. So there's two sides to it.
I think also just I think it made him look more beautiful as a man when he was lean because he looked like a god and a model at the same time. Whereas the second movie, like there's actually just I saw this on Tumblr. There's a juxtaposition of him in a poster in the first movie and then him in the poster of the second movie. And someone wrote, "Did he eat himself? Because he looks so huge." The
answer is yes. Yes, he did.
Yeah. Little nitpicky detail that a fashion photographer would pick up on and like really, really hate over the years. Also, him in Man of Steel, he had black hair, and that is sort of a costuming decision. They kept his Henry Cavill kept his natural like sort of dark brown hair in the later movies. But really, I think one of the aspects of Superman is he's supposed to be a beautiful looking man, like someone who does not look of this earth. Bright blue eyes, normally tan skin. The black hair, because that's not a combination you really see often.
Right. He's otherworldly while also being of the world, but not of the world and all these things. He's supposed to be a statue, basically. You know, a Renaissance statue. Yeah. Well, I guess a Renaissance statue if you painted the hair black, I guess. Which Michelangelo would probably not approve of. Just throwing that out there. Probably wouldn't like it if you touched his statues. Moses, I'm just going to color your hair in red. That's what I'm feeling today. Anyway.
Photoshop is a thing if you want a visual.
That's true. It is a thing, which I do not have. Well, I have visuals. I just don't have Photoshop. So let's table Superman. Actually, let's table male heroes. Let's move over to female heroes. Is there it's almost a smaller pool to pull from.
It is.
But like what works for some characters and what works for other characters, and then generally, where do you draw the line at a costume designer, like I guess leaving their mark versus pulling inspiration? Like how far is too far? Because sometimes costumes on a page are almost impossible to wear. They're not designed to be functional when you're drawing them in a comic. Spider-Man is a great example of that. You would never actually be able to fight crime in that, or Batman or something, so where can you allow some kind of change versus what is essential to a character's costume?
If you don't mind, I want to wrap up the DC stuff real quick, just because it does tie into female costumes.
Go for it.
Real quick, I love that the DC Extended Universe does its absolute best to try to make a costume look exactly like what is on the page.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most amazing demonstration of that is the Aquaman costume.
Truly,
right?
You're talking
literally
the actual Aquaman costume, not the Justice League costume.
The actual Aquaman costume, like they did that.
Mm-hmm.
They really did that. The Wonder Woman costume, I love that the version that came out with the movie is now the default. Anytime, any comic you've read since that movie came out, that is the costume she's wearing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's completely functional. It has her same color scheme. It's a skirt, and it's there. I have two characters I want to talk about with female costumes who have very different costumes. They're also very, very sexual. It's weird because the Catwoman costume from Batman Returns is, honest to God, probably the most impractical costume that has ever existed.
Oh,
she had to be vacuum sealed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she had to be vacuum sealed into that costume. You would not be able to move, let alone do anything athletic in it.
Nope, and greased. They had to, between takes, they had to paint her to keep her shiny.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that is probably one of the coolest Catwoman costumes that will ever exist,
Mm-hmm.
and I make an allowance for it.
It's true. It's very cool. I like that costume particularly. I was thinking of because you're right. It's not practical, and I don't need my superhero costumes to be practical. And actually, all of the Tim Burton Batman costumes are a perfect example of that. A complete you would die your first day going out as Batman wearing something like that.
He literally rips his cowl apart in Batman Returns. It's not
protective material. It's not helpful.
Right.
Even though it withstands bullets in both movies, it's fine. That's not important right now. But her costume ties to her character because as her psyche begins to break more and more throughout the film, her costume also becomes undone. Like she's literally stitched herself back together, and she's like holding herself in this costume, it being vacuum sealed. And then as her costume starts to unravel, she also is unraveling, she looks incredibly disheveled by the end of the film because she's completely snapped herself. And then she, like, spoilers for Batman Returns, but she dies, quote unquote. And then that final shot of the film is her reborn all over again. She's mended herself because she's lived, that's two lives that she's gone through. Once as Selena Kyle, she died once as Selena Kyle, once as Catwoman, and now she's back again. There's really I prefer costumes with forethought like that, and I appreciate that about her costume.
And it also has a little of that element you like, where there's something kind of cool and practical in there. Where her claws, she does have claws, which help her, be violent and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they have like the needles sewn in, like aren't they like
they're sewing, like, I don't know if they're like safety. I don't know if they're safety pins.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I think they're safety pins. That's cool. That's a very, I mean, she had a lot of latex in her closet for somebody who's very meek and doesn't like to go outside. But that's besides the point.
Yes, like her introduction in the movie is just like the most un-Selena Kyle thing ever, but it's, her version is still iconic. Speaking of iconic, look at that segue. First timer here, and she knows what she's doing.
That's very good.
But the other costume I want to mention is iconic because it references someone. It is Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad, which I love this costume. It was that's not what Harley Quinn looks like in the comics, but they had a lot of there are a lot of things they had to consider. Like, for one, they couldn't have her in the jester costume. I think actually being a listener of your podcast, I remember when you reviewed this on Beer with Geeks and you said something to the effect of, "That's great, you let me see it. I never want to see that again."
Yep, I distinctly remember seeing it. I still think it. Like, I saw it on screen. It doesn't work. I mean, certainly that was a very, like, it was a jumpsuit, and her, the headpiece was, it was almost like a low budget cosplay versus, you know, a practical ensemble. But you know what? I saw it, and that's fine, and we can move on with our lives. That's okay.
So, in lieu of that, I think that's why they gave her the pigtails, is because they still wanted to have something that called the image of the stripe down her head. Mm-hmm. So the idea of Harley Quinn with pigtails, I love that. Also because she kind of acts like a little girl. But so
she has
she
has pigtails starting in the New 52 in the comics as well.
There we go. Which that decision was made, I think, for the similar reasons. Because in the New 52, is it New 52 or Injustice where it's like half red and then half black?
That is the New 52. And then once Suicide Squad came out, they changed it so that she has blonde hair with the pink and the blue. So the film actually then influenced the comics.
There we go. So I don't know if the listeners might know this, but Harley Quinn's costume in Suicide Squad is based off of an outfit that Debbie Harry wore in 1978 or something. Debbie Harry from Blondie. Tim, did you know that?
I vaguely remember you tweeting about it pretty recently, right? Was that you?
Probably.
Yes.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, I did not know that. That was brand new information when I saw the tweet. But I love that was a great. I haven't seen anybody pick up on that, really.
So I'm a huge Blondie fan, and I think Blondie is one of those bands that people might not know that they know them. If anyone does not think that they don't know Blondie, they sing Heart of Glass one way or another, and Call Me. So Debbie Harry is like this giant sex symbol and like punk icon from the 70s. She was like the girl in the punk scene, and her boyfriend, who was also in the band, he did this iconic photo shoot with her where she was in a shirt that said Vultures on it, and it had a bunch of holes in it. And she wore leather panties and a studded belt. And literally, like, this has been said, Harley Quinn, confirmed, Harley Quinn's outfit in Suicide Squad was inspired by Debbie Harry. And it's kind of cool because they showed her, her being Margot Robbie, a bunch of those costumes, and she chose the Debbie Harry one. Which is great because Harley is called Blondie, like, I think in the comics, like, whenever you see a blonde girl, she inevitably is called blonde at some point in her life.
Yep.
And here's a crazy, crazy, crazy bit of trivia. I think it's in Batman. What was that? Batman Harley Quinn, the animated movie that came out about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Harley sings a Blondie song in that movie. Literally, the actress who voices Harley in that movie, there's a scene where they're like all in a bar and
Melissa Rauch.
There we go.
Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm.
They're like in a karaoke bar and she has to distract everyone, so she starts singing and she sings a Blondie song. So that is just insane.
Wow.
To me.
That is
right.
Look at you laying the connections and the knowledge, and this is your first episode of Beer with Geeks. Look at you.
See, this is why I knew I'd fit in, and this is why I aggressively became friends with you guys on the internet.
It was pretty aggressive. All of a sudden, I was like, wow, I've known you for 2 years already. How did that happen?
But yeah, so I obviously have a huge bias here because I love Blondie and I recognize their importance. The decision to present Harley in Suicide Squad, which David Ayer, I think he actually used to be in gangs in Los Angeles or ran around with gangs. Mm-hmm. He did make it gang inspired. So that was a really cool cultural departure, I think.
I agree and disagree all at the same time. I think in the DCEU up until Suicide Squad was very much like as you said, like, this is what the characters look like on the page, and now this is what they're going to look like on screen. And Suicide Squad departs from that drastically. It goes in a completely different direction. It's like, oh, I guess that's kind of what they look like, so we'll do our own thing. And I think it works for some characters and some not. I think the inspiration for Harley certainly works very well, and I don't think the Jester costume works in that ensemble the way that the way that the film presents itself, but I kind of just I got used to comic accuracy.
Costumes.
Yeah, so sometimes the Suicide Squad costumes leave me with a little something to be desired. But it depends on the character. I think the Deadshot one is fine. I think Killer Croc's makeup looks terrific. So there are instances where it's okay. I actually don't mind I'm one of the few that I don't mind the Joker's look in Suicide Squad. I don't like Damaged. I don't care for the tattoos. They're
Right.
a little too Joker's a little too self-knowledgeable for some of those tattoos. And I don't like the grill. I find it more distracting than anything. I just can't stop looking at his mouth in the wrong way. But the purple alligator skin coat or anything like that, I think all that works just fine.
Right. I will say that I love the hand on the back of his hand. He does this move in the movie where he puts his hand on top of his mouth, and then it's like a mouth on top of his mouth, and you can tell that he does that. That's probably a thing that he does often in the DC Extended Universe world. But as far as his general look goes, I don't mind it because they have found a way to dress him like a gangster in different ways. Certainly the Jack Nicholson variation, they made him look like a gangster in the 1920s.
Sure, he looks like Al Capone in purple or something like that. Yeah, I'm actually looking at that one right now. It's funny that you say that. Jack Nicholson's Joker is such an interesting costume because he just basically is the Joker. There's this is what the Joker wears, this is what Jack Nicholson's going to wear, and it's his face, with the perma grin that gives you the twist of something new and fresh and different, as opposed to just looking like Cesar Romero. But his costume is just his costume. It's different when they're clothes. The Joker has a color scheme, so it's almost in a weird way hard to screw that up. It's not the same as ooh, that Batman cowl doesn't look good, or why did you change Captain America's shield to be a square? That was a strange decision.
It's practical clothes.
That's right. Yeah, it's practical clothes. So, and that because it's almost the opposite of Catwoman, where Jack Nicholson's clothes he's just pants and a jacket and a tie, and it works in every scene that he's in. And he wears purple before he becomes the Joker in that film. So it's just he just wears what he wears, sort of. Becomes a little bit more flamboyant as the movie goes on, but don't we all become more flamboyant as we get older?
True. I wanted to throw the question back to you. I feel like I've been dominating a lot now, pointing out all my favorite versions of costumes. Are there any that you love that I haven't hit?
This is a truly great question. I love, maybe because I was a kid when they came out, I love the Michael Keaton versions of the Batman suit. However impractical they work so well on screen as silhouettes and in shadow, and as if you're talking framing the character, and what they look like, I think that they're quite good. And so I appreciate those. Very much. I love the Captain America costumes from the Marvel films. Except for Avengers, nobody really cares for that one. But it's the mask that really screws him over on that one. To go in a slightly different direction than what we've been talking about, I think the Iron Man armors always look good for the most part, except for Iron Man 3. Oh, that armor is just terrible. It's too much gold. It is truly, truly awful. For characters that you don't see a lot on screen, I think Disney's The Rocketeer has an amazing costume because it's not a costume. And I love that about it. Have you ever seen The Rocketeer?
I have not. I don't even think I know what it's about.
It's about this kid. It's this late teens, early 20s, who works at an airfield during World War II, and he's like a test pilot kind of thing, or he wants to be. Mm-hmm. He's like a showman, or almost. And he and this guy, Alan Arkin, maybe Alan Alda, it's one of them, I can't remember. Alan Arkin. Pretty sure it's Alan Arkin. They find a rocket pack, and it ends up being a experiment from the government. It ends up being an experiment for the government to kind of like help take down the Nazis. And there's like secret Nazis in there. It's like very pulp fun, but his costume is a pair of khakis and boots and a leather jacket. That's it. But the character Alan Alda Arkin, whichever one, makes this very Art Deco helmet. And it's got these really big wide eyes and a grill mouth and this very cool fin and whatever else. And that's the whole thing. And it just works beautifully on screen. It creates such a good frame. Are you looking at it right now?
I just realized we're on Beer with Geeks. I have one lookup.
Oh, you have a lookup. Yeah, use it. Go look it up. That's right. It really is. It really is a spectacular costume on screen. And that's probably one of my favorite. I think it makes the character better because it looks so good on screen.
Oh, I love this.
Right?
You weren't kidding with the Art Deco thing. The top of his helmet kind of looks like a Cadillac, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like a car.
That's a really he looks like he belongs on the Chrysler building.
Right. And then his jacket is it looks kind of like how they did Jay Garrick's costume on The Flash.
Yes, I can see the connection there. That also, Art Deco-ish inspired.
Right. Oh, speaking of, we haven't talked about like TV at all.
Oh, we haven't talked about TV. Well, let's wrap around to TV because, I mean, there are so many superhero costumes out there, and like which ones work and which ones don't work. We could do a whole like top 10 like bad and good. And you know what? You're welcome back to do that at any time. But let's talk about TV in the generic sense, in that sometimes they're beautiful and sometimes they're not so beautiful. And sometimes it's season dependent. If you go really far back and you look at like the Incredible Hulk, Lou Ferrigno, that's a costume. His body paint, his wig is terrible, but the rest of it kind of works. He's a big hulking man. Although it's funny, there are a couple TV films for the Incredible Hulk, and Daredevil's in one of them, and he's just in a black stocking, like a black spandex with the hood covered over. And then that crept its way into comics, and then that crept its way onto Netflix. So it all
there we go.
It all comes back around. I actually really love the Netflix Daredevil costume because it's a costume, but it's got that practical side where he's like, it's just a quote unquote body armor, but his helmet mask thing really works on screen, depending on the season. But it really works for him. And I appreciate that.
I'm slightly lukewarm on the Netflix costumes, especially. I think probably if we want to make a list of like the worst costumes ever, probably the Iron Fist one is at number one.
So tragic because it's a non-costume. Daredevil is really the only one that has a costume, unless you count the Punisher and Elektra.
That's true.
That's Punisher works actually. Punisher really works, but the rest.
I will say. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, I'm done. Go.
I will say the decision to put Luke Cage in a hoodie was probably the most, I guess, like emotionally grabbing decision that in a superhero context that I've come across. It was like their tribute to Trayvon Martin. So even though he's in a hoodie and that's his costume, I love that they did that.
Ooh, that's very good. See, you're laying down I feel like I have to step up my game. I'm trying to think like. So Michael Keaton's costume in Batman Returns, instead of it looking like a human, reflects the Art Deco style of the city. So he almost is like one of the gargoyles looming over Gotham. There, I did it.
We're literally having a measuring contest right now.
Nah.
Okay, I see you're Michael Keaton, and I raise you. I don't actually have a response. Do not take me seriously.
No, that's okay.
There.
That's all I've got too. So we're 2 for 2. So it's all good. It's all good. But the Netflix DC, I think that the Green Arrow costume on CW for the most part works, depending on the season. But generally it's good. I mean, it's the Green Arrow. It's hard to screw up. He almost could do with more colors in his suit, like it's too like forest green. Like throw some brown in there or something like that. Give me something to look at.
Right. I think the Green Arrow costume, it's kind of like the Wonder Woman costume in the sense that it kind of took everything that was being done in comics, and then it was so great it sort of changed the way people want to see that suit from now on.
Yep, I agree.
I don't love the Flash suit because when I look at that, I think, oh, we're basically back in the early 2000s with, a leather costume. For it's weird how it makes sense for Oliver, and he does ride a motorcycle sometimes, but I'm not a fan of Barry Allen's suit on the Flash.
What about his spandex suit in season 5?
I think it looks horrible.
I'm
sorry.
No, that's fine. I think the body looks okay, but the mask is terrible.
I think the whole thing looks terrible, and I will also say that includes the mask, which I think is terrible.
Yeah, mask is terrible. It's because he doesn't have a chin, and so it's the same with Chris Evans in the Captain America outfit. Like they need the chin strap because they have Irish chin, i.e., no chin at all. So potentially French chin, also no chin. So whatever.
It's funny. They did that to make it more comic accurate because he doesn't have a chin strap in the comics. But I get what they're trying to do. At that point, you just need to me, if it were up to me, I would just choose to ignore it because it doesn't look good.
Nope, I agree. It's not a good look for him. I think Supergirl's costume is pretty. I mean, they don't really touch it at all. So
Right. It's actually the one costume that hasn't had modifications since season 1 because Barry and Oliver basically get a new costume every season, even if it's just like tiny little things to it. Barry has had four different costumes.
Suits? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oliver has had 4 or 5. But Kara has had the same costumes, and she's on season 4.
Yeah, well, I think because it's simple and it's their costumes are in a way like body suit uniforms, but it's that same idea that
That's true.
Kara doesn't need the armor or the anything, so she's in a shirt and skirt, and so it kind of works for her. I do wish that she had the yellow, but I'm far past the point of caring. But
I forgot that I cared about that. You are right.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. 200. Well, I think it's because they needed a way to distinguish that's you're looking at Supergirl, not Superman.
I think that's
right?
I think that's part of it. I also think that they didn't think that the yellow would play super well on screen. The yellow is, too old school or whatever. We got to make our mark on it a little bit. And so, but it's fine. It works for her. But I think the yellow makes the S stand out more. So she would make a bigger impact. The crest would mean more if you could see it better. But that's a minor squabble on Kara's outfit.
2 things about that. I do think there is that makes it stand out more. But I when you look at Supergirl merch, and if it's something that's shield based where it's just the S emblem, that is what distinguishes it. That's how you know I'm buying something that's Supergirl versus Superman, is if you see the blue behind it. So while I do miss the yellow, it kind of was a good marketing choice because then, she could become, even she has a show now. Superman doesn't have a show right now. She has a show, but you could still look at the Superman logo and you would never think Supergirl. But when you see that logo, you think Supergirl. Just another kind of cool fun fact is the original Man of Steel suit was blue underneath. In the earliest test photos of Henry Cavill in the suit, it's just the thin spandex, and it's the emblem put on top. They painted the suit afterwards to be gold.
Huh.
They physically painted the cloth.
I vaguely remember a promotional still or something like that where it was just the red and the blue, where they didn't have the yellow at all. I remember them releasing that. That's crazy. Well, I'm glad that's there because it works. It pops well.
I agree. If I can harp on Supergirl just a little bit more.
Go for it.
I love that I think that they essentially took the Helen Slater costume from the 1984 movie and they brought it to life because she's had a lot of iterations. She's had, crop top, no crop top. She's had pants, she's had no pants. She's had a sort of a unibody suit, and she has had the skirt. But ultimately, it looks like they basically said, how do we take the Helen Slater Supergirl, the one that probably most people know, and how do we bring it to life? Because right down to the little the belt with the V, the chevron, I guess, that is completely Helen Slater's Supergirl look, with the blue meeting the V and then going into the red skirt. So I thought that was super cool. They do have the little details. They have the lines. They have her. You called it the arm thong last week. We were talking about something completely unrelated, and you called it the arm thong.
Thumb thong.
Thumb thong.
I'm a fan of alliteration. You gotta, yeah. But that's what it is. That's the, that it holds her arm down. Make sure it doesn't get wrinkly.
I will come up with a better term for this. I just cannot right now.
Oh, sure.
I'm not in love with her tights or her I call them the go-go boots, like the flappy boots. I wish they were just like calf length.
I think the boots being so high are in some ways impractical, but when she slides on the ground and does stuff like that, means she's not ripping the tights. So
that's true. I wonder how often she goes through tights.
It's probably her biggest, probably her biggest thing on the budget. That would be my guess.
They just order like Costco packs of women's sheer tights.
Maybe she reuses them and makes new ones. I don't know. That's one of those mysteries that I don't want to unravel. Speaking of TV, some of those side characters on all of those shows.
Wait, can I make a Supergirl note real quick?
Yeah.
Just because I think you'll love this.
Okay.
Because I actually did think about this a little bit before I appeared today, and I knew I wanted to say this to you. And sorry to interrupt you, but we were talking about how we both love when there's a reason for the suit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think 500% Kara should be in pants. Like, I do not want to see her in a skirt. That's impractical. She flies. Like, I don't want to see Kara in a skirt. But if we ever wanted to bring a practical element to it, I would love for a comic book writer someday to have her, sort of, doing her superhero rite of passage where she's deciding on what to do for her outfit. And then maybe she's talking to Clark, and someone can say, like, do you want maybe Clark says, do you want a version of my suit? And then she'll say something to the effect of, I want to look like you. I want to wear something similar to you, but I trained with Diana on Themyscira, and I want to somehow look like her too. And then that would be a perfect reason to have her always wear a skirt.
That is a great little headcanon. I mean, she did train with Diana in the pre-52 version, so that you could conceivably, in your mind grapes, go and like twist the story that way. So I like it. I like both versions. I mean, you and I have talked about this off mic before, where it's like she's in a skirt because she's a girl. It's like of that era, with like Mary Marvel and Supergirl, and they just like, oh, you're a girl, wear a skirt. So, but at the same time, it has become her iconic look because it's been that way for so long. So it's hard to sometimes it's hard to break out of those things.
Right.
To wrap up some of the TV stuff, Martian Manhunter, I love the Martian Manhunter on Supergirl. I love that suit. It really works for that character. And finally, this is the series finale of Gotham just happened, so we get to see a Catwoman and a Batman on screen very, very briefly. And Catwoman's not.
That was the conversation that inspired this entire episode.
Pretty much, yeah. And so Catwoman is not really Catwoman because she doesn't have ears, and
she's called Cat since episode 1, so that really bothered me.
And she has those goggles, right? She has those goggles she used to wear for years and years.
And didn't she also have claws as of like season 4?
Yes, she did. Mm-hmm.
Yep. There we go.
Yep.
Well, she did have the claws, so she had the claws in the finale. If you haven't seen the finale, I'm sorry, I'm letting you know she has claws in the finale.
It's okay. It's not really a spoiler. It's fine. We know who she is. And so, but I feel like you're so close at that point. Why not just do it? It's not like you're going to make another show. So who cares why she has ears or doesn't have ears? Just give her the ears. But from a comic reader standpoint, Batman generally inspires people to wear costumes in Gotham, like, because he's the first one doing it. And Catwoman particularly is like, hey, I like your style. whoever you are, strange man dressed like a bat, I'm going to go in that direction as well. So so that's literally Frank Miller in Year One, where she's like, hey, that's fun. I'm going to do that too. So so it's fine. It just would have been nice to see. And then there's the Batman costume. To which I say, you gave me a full costume, so on that end, I applaud you. You gave me a full costume. But
that costume was only ever designed to be a silhouette.
Yeah. And boy, shouldn't it have been. Yeah. Yeah. It looks like they
cosplay.
No, I've seen cosplay way better, honestly.
Or how about 2005 cosplay?
Yeah, there you go.
Before, maybe
it looks like someone saw a picture of Christian Bale's Dark Knight costume from afar and went, "Ooh, I think I can do that," and then ran out of money
and they
a quarter
chopped
of the way
of,
through.
Cereal boxes and painted them and made pads out of cardboard and
yeah, it's just not great. Actually, so the body itself is not terrible. Like it's separated in strange places, and but the bat symbol itself was quite large and prominent, and I appreciated that. There's almost a blue sheen to the cape, which I also kind of appreciate because I would like to see Batman in blue at some point on screen. But it's actually the cowl that is really awful. It's just
it's sort of the right shape though.
Kind of the right shape. It depends on the angle.
The ears are nice and long.
Yeah, I do like the long ears, but it really depends on the angle to which he is presented. But the way he's presented on screen for Gotham works. But if you look at him just when the light's on, they're kind of in the middle of his head, and they shoot straight up, and it doesn't work from a side. It doesn't work
like a TV.
Yeah, it doesn't work from a middle. It doesn't work looking at his side profile. But again, I say I got the full suit on screen. He literally became Batman by the end, and so I must be grateful.
We are at almost twice our time, but I can't resist asking you one last question.
Mm-hmm.
What is as a fanboy, what is the costume that you want to see realized that maybe you might not know what it looks like yet, or it's just you want to see it someday? What is that for you?
I want to see a accurate Doctor Doom on screen. Actually, I'm going to go in. It's a Marvel direction, but
is that the guy from Fantastic Four?
That's the guy from Fantastic Four. Yeah, we've had. I've seen.
I know stuff.
I've seen 3 versions of Doctor Doom's costume on screen before. The first movie is barely passable, but the mask looks okay, so it's fine. The second one's actually not bad as far as Doctor Doom goes. It's as far as costumes, but it does look kind of cheap. And then the new Fantastic Four stick is just a truly awful, awful, awful costume that I will have nightmares about forever. So that's probably Doctor Doom is probably something that I would really love to see, although that second one's pretty close. And an accurate Green Goblin to keep in a Marvel area, because there's Power Ranger Green Goblin, and then there's
oh my gosh, yes.
And then there's got hit by a car Power Rangers Green Goblin in Amazing Spider-Man, and I'm just waiting. Here I am, I'm just waiting for a good Green Goblin, and I have yet to see one. So those are probably my 2 biggest ones. How about you?
Ooh, I asked the question and I was not quite prepared to answer it.
I'm always there for you that way.
Awesome. Actually, I know my answer to this, but it's not comics. Or it's kind of comics. Manga.
Okay, go for it.
Does that count?
Yeah, it counts.
So one of my earliest fandoms, I think, Frank had Superman, you had Batman. Mm-hmm. My earliest fandom ever was Sailor Moon. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
I used to watch Sailor Moon every day before going to school.
You are the coolest.
But
Tim, you are the coolest.
Every day, Tuxedo Mask was the man. Oh my God. But school started at 8 and Sailor Moon was on at 7:30, and I lived 5 minutes away from the school, so I never finished almost any episode because we had to go to school. Oh.
Well, Tim, if you want to have an undertaking and you want to rewatch it and like live text me the entire way, it'll probably make my entire life.
All right. I'll take it under advisement.
Also,
yeah.
This is great, and this is me being really, really, really nerdy. I know for a fact that if you were watching it at that time in the morning, you watched it during its first run when it was like season 1, because they had like this weird thing where they did season 1 and half of season 2, and they took like a couple year hiatus and they came back a couple years later. And it's weird because all my peers, I'm slightly younger than you, all my peers who love it, they have never seen the episodes that I grew up with, like the ones that I watched when I was basically a fetus, because that's how young I was. But
image.
So I have such a soft spot for that first season. Also, I trust you so much knowing that you're a guy and you like Sailor Moon. That is amazing. I don't know if I want to see like girls running around in that exact costume or even an adaptation of that costume. But from the problem solving aspect of how do we take this, how do we make it feel similar, even if we don't do it exactly, I think that that's probably one of the most unique challenges you can take up with that property, Sailor Moon.
Wow. I think that you're right. That would be incredibly challenging because comic accurate or anime accurate Sailor Moon or anything like that probably wouldn't fly in live action. People would raise some eyebrows. So how would you change that? That's a good question. It's a great question. Wow.
And despite being a fan for literally I've been watching this show for 24 years. I know this about myself. I've been watching that show for 24 years. I didn't just tell you guys how old I was. I told you how long I've been watching
That's
it.
True. That's true. Although you did say you were a fetus when you started watching it, so,
I was joking. I definitely was not watching it as a fetus. But basically a fetus. Having thought about this for the past 24 years, I don't have an answer. But just how I wanted to see a Superman suit that was really cool and that still more or less was his costume, and I got to see that. I want to believe in the day where I get that for Sailor Moon.
Okay. Well, there we go. I'm still waiting on. I get Batflix as close as I've got, and it's almost perfect. It's like 99% perfect. I was not a huge fan of his cowl. I like longer ears on a Batman.
I got used to it. I love his suit. I will say that's my favorite Batman suit.
It's probably mine too, but he would actually look dumb with long ears because he's broad, and so to have long ears, he wouldn't look right on screen. So it's all about ratios, and so anyway, so we're way over time though. So Lauren, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast, and next time we'll do like a top 10 and top 10 best and top 10 worst superhero and supervillain costumes. We'll have a good time. So Lauren, where can the people find you?
You guys can find me in Tim's mentions most of the time, or like tweeting at him. On Twitter, I am at Lauren Neckow-Win. You can find me basically anywhere online using that same handle. I also have a podcast on the network. I'm not sure if I should mention it or not.
Go for it.
It was the Lois Lane TV show that didn't quite leave the development stage. Me and my friend Connor, we have a podcast on Thought Bubble Audio called Metropolis Pod, where we are ready to go if that show is ever greenlit. We have some development episodes where we talk about Lois Lane and Superman and all their various adaptations. So if you guys want to see that, or if you are currently a listener and you want to see more of that, hear more of that, tweet at us at MetPod on Twitter, and we'll prioritize that right away. Tim, thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
No,
where can the people find you?
Thank you for coming so much. Come back anytime. The people can find me at TimothyPG13, and they can, of course, follow Beer with Geeks at Beer with Geeks on Facebook, Twitter, and emails at gmail.com. You can rate and review Beer with Geeks on iTunes and find us all the places that podcasts can be found. And you can check out all other Thought Bubble audio shows at thoughtbubbleaudio.com. So, Lauren, I say, until next time, cheers.